visiting fellow, also a National Taxpayers Union senior fellow as well. Susan, let me start with you. Now, this wasn't news out of China. This is speculation by the Wall Street Journal and others that President Trump is going to try to curb China's ability to invest in technology companies. And this gets back to that Made in China 2025, their ambitions to be the world's tech giant.
Yeah, it does. And I think semantics matter in this case because, President Xi was delivering his message to a global council of CEOs, multinationals. He knows how to get the message to the U.S. administration, especially with impact, with people that obviously run a huge amount of the U.S. economy. And, I think China is kind of on the back foot right now, not knowing which way the winds of the Trump administration is going. How do you play Donald Trump and the president, especially in these, considering these big trade talks?
Especially when President Trump's team talked last week of an additional $200 billion. Yeah. Well, we export less than that. So China, they have a limit as to what they can do with respect to curbing or tariffs on our imports to them. But what would their alternative be? Because, a lot of people aren't talking about moves that are being made there. They're pumping hundreds of billions of dollars into their economy. Yeah. And there seems to be some level of anxiety, even though, of course, President Xi has to put on a brave face. They're not necessarily in a tough negotiating position.
No, well, they're trying to make it, they say qualitative punches is what they're going to take in reaction to any more tariffs that the U.S. administration puts on them. And qualitative is really the only way to go, as you mentioned. They will run out of goods to tariff back on the U.S., right? And qualitative measures, in their view, is slow walking, exports crossing the border. GM makes more cars now in China than they sell here in the U.S., believe it or not. $40 billion business for smartphone makers like Apple. So they're saying qualitative, they could be making things a lot more difficult, a lot more red tape in the future. But again, I feel like they're on the back foot because their economy is going through a rough patch right now, credit conditions, and they really do need to export more to make more money.
Now, Maddie, I know you're of the school that no one wins a trade war, and certainly a skirmish between the world's two largest economies would be ugly. No one disputes that. But I do, it's interesting because in America, the financial markets mostly focus on the losses here, right? No one's really talking about the Shenzhen market being down 50% from its recent peak or down 17% now. Is that something you think, though, perhaps the Trump administration could be looking at, saying, hey, you know what, we're winning this thing?
Well, I think what the Trump administration should be looking at is trying to assess and identify what their goal is with all these trade actions. This is a good point that was made earlier, which is let's look at what China is. China is, at its core, a central planning, nationalized economy. They have their government involved in every single aspect of that economy. They don't have any concept of free enterprise and free markets like we do here. So we know that fundamentally we have the capacity to grow and to outstrip China's growth because we have the mechanics that are right. Now, we run the threat of potentially undermining that if we implement policy that hurts China but hurts the United States more. We need to make sure that whatever we're doing, if the goal is to put pressure on China, it doesn't similarly put pain on American businesses and stop the growth that's being fueled here. After tax cuts and deregulation that the Trump administration is undergoing, we have an open for business side in the United States. We need to continue to foster better capital formation here in order for that to continue.
What do you make of that? Is it the idea of a Pyrrhic victory, in a place where, we're the fastest, best growing economy in the world right now? Some are saying, why jeopardize that?
Well, Charles, I don't think people understand how massive the theft that's going on from China, the pillaging that's going on right now. The people that are nervous about what President Trump's doing simply don't understand it. This is an espionage that we have not seen ever in the history of the country. You can take a look. The White House put out a report that came out this month that talks about all of this. They are stealing our IP on an unprecedented level. They're doing it with hundreds of thousands of people around the world that they're using to do this. They have 100,000 people in China right now. All their job is to do cyber theft around the world. They've got 40,000 people that are outside of their country that are doing economic espionage. Right. There are 300,000 Chinese people in the United States right now that are at our universities, our labs, our companies, and many of them, not all of them, but a number of them are actively trying to steal things for the People's Republic of China.
Why then are the biggest brains on Wall Street, why are the globalists, if you will, why aren't they acknowledging this much? And, why are we reading stories about the losses of small industries or small businesses? What do you make of that? I mean, is it just that the globalists don't care who wins because they're going to benefit from it?
I don't know what they're thinking, but they are simply not informed if they don't understand what's happening. I mean, the Chinese are doing things to our country that we haven't seen done before, and they've infiltrated a lot of our corporate systems. They are economic sabotage is rampant.
Right.
They are forcing our companies to turn over intellectual property to them to even do business there. They're not open to us. I mean, this trade war thing about Trump's had a trade war going on right now. That Trump didn't start this. This has been going on for over a decade.
And to your
point,
have been. In May, ARM Holdings, the largest tech company in England, the largest in England, was forced to give a 51% ownership in a JV in China, which again underscores the strong arming. But here's the thing. With the media in America being so anti-Trump and now businesses sort of blinking, it's going to put a lot of pressure on him. President Trump's realizing this, and I think some of it's a surprise to him because he just put out a tweet moments ago that said, surprised that Harley-Davidson, of all companies, would be the first to wave the white flag. I fought hard for them, and ultimately, they will not pay tariffs selling into the EU, which has hurt us badly on trade, down $151 billion. Taxes, just a Harley excuse. Be patient. All right, Susan, you talked about those 30 business leaders. I will say to President Trump's tweet, in the last quarter in America, Harley's business in America went down 12%. Their business in Europe went up almost 7%. And this trend has been going on for a long time. So logically, it would make sense that they would move some manufacturing closer to their fastest growing economy or the fastest growing market, maybe using the tariff as a way of not acknowledging what's happening in America. I think it's not really a great deal because they did meet with President Trump, and I thought there was a good relationship building there.
So you think it's strategic, basically, for their business to be moving their production?
You know, what they didn't say is our business is falling apart in America, so we're going to try and build elsewhere, which is really the true story here.
But they have to absorb the cost if you think about it, because they're saying that it's going to cost them more than $2,000 on each Harley bike that they now will have to sell into the European market. I don't think they can actually pass that on to the consumer, right? So if they move their factories, hire people in Europe, ultimately, I think they have to absorb the cost, don't they?
Oh, no. My point is that they were going to move to Europe. I think they were going to have to move to Europe anyway. But I think this is a way of them avoiding having to acknowledge that their business is in trouble here in America, has been in some time. Maddie, I want to give you the last word because I didn't see today more as trade as more. I saw today more, and this is more what Hal was talking about, the administration trying to push back on Made in China 2025. Everyone should brush up and learn about this because it is a very ambitious plan to be the world's technology leader. And one of the ways they've gotten to this point is massive theft. We know that. And ultimately, it's not just about open markets, lower tariffs, but it's also about not stealing from us. And so how smart is it for at least the administration to stand up for that?
I am not arguing that China shouldn't have to answer for its malfeasance. It absolutely should, and we should have strict policy in place that forces it to do so. However, we need that public policy to be clear and directed at the bad actors. Having different tweets and different spokespeople say different things about what our China policy is going to be doesn't help us actually get to the root of the problem. It confuses the message, and it allows for the bad actors to continue to work their malfeasance unabated. And that's bad for all Americans and for the global economy.
And you know what? I'm with you 1,000%. That Mnuchin tweet made things 1,000. It was like throwing kerosene on a burning fire. It was just ridiculous. And, everyone wants to tweet these days. There's only one person in the administration who should be tweeting. And even that's sometimes questionable.
Even then, Charles, I'm not so sure.
We'll leave it there. Thank you all very much. Next, a prominent Democrat lawmaker digs in deep and blames the president. This after calling for the public to publicly harass Trump administration's officials. Get in their face. We'll be right back.